Okay, we're here with Hugo Barajas, who is a first-generation Mexican-American, here to speak about his experience in America as well as his parents' journey. So Hugo, I was just wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about your parents' journey to America and their experience.
Well, both my parents emigrated from Mexico to the United States, my dad being first, and he actually traveled to the United States illegally, and he is what would you call a wetback. Now, what this implies is he actually crossed the Rio Grande to get to the United States, and he spent some time in the United States before he convinced my mom to come to the United States, and she first brought my sister over, and then me, and then the rest of my siblings. But it's a complicated story.
Okay, do you think have you and your parents ever talked about any racial discrimination against them when they were in America?
It does happen, but because there's a lot of factors that play in reporting like cases of racism, because there's things such as the language barrier, or something that's very prominent in my family or in people that I know is, your immigration status. A lot of the times there'll be a lot of issues that you deal with, but because there's always this fear of you getting deported, a lot of these issues aren't brought up. And so maybe there have been cases that my parents have, been discriminated against, but they would never tell um, the authorities or anything like that.
Hugo, I was wondering if you could speak about the difference in your experience from when you first came to America and now.
Well, the reason that we came to America was because of my dad and my mom. My dad first emigrated to the United States when he was in his 20s, and he came first to the United States, and he worked here some time, and then he convinced my mom to come to the United States permanently, because she and my dad were living in Mexico and they were traveling back and forth, but my mom didn't want that, and so she decided to sacrifice her life in Mexico, her job, her parents, and all that she had in Mexico to migrate to the United States. And so I remember we arrived in East Los Angeles, where it was a very small home, and it was dark, and it was a very different atmosphere than what I was used to, because in Mexico it was where I lived, it was a very rural town. And so coming into the United States and, seeing this cold, dark atmosphere, and it didn't help that it was at night, because it just added to this fear of this new environment that I was being placed in. And it was difficult at first, because going to school and not knowing the language, and you're immediately immersed into a new culture where you have to adapt. And my parents couldn't really help me, doing my homework, or they really couldn't help me in any other way other than, give me the support that I asked for. Now, looking back, that I'm a young adult, it's caused me to look back on my childhood and really see how much of this Americanization has affected my family. Coming to the United States, my parents were very traditional Mexican, Catholic values. They were very strict on education, on the way that I was brought up, on the way the household was kept. And slowly over time, it's inevitable. You're going to experience change. As a child, I was never allowed to celebrate Halloween, because my parents saw it as something foreign, as something that, they had never been used to. But over time, they realized, that it was just something fun, and over time, my parents just allowed me to do it. And another instance was, we never celebrated Thanksgiving. Growing up in a Mexican household, that's a very American occasion. And over time, when Thanksgiving came around, we saw things such as the turkey and mashed potatoes. This new event had been incorporated into our lives. And I remember now for Christmas, when we used to have traditional Mexican foods, you know, such as tamales and menudo, you know, now we're incorporating other things that are not, you know, traditionally seen as Mexican. And I think it's important to realize that, you know, being in America, I can still be Mexican and still keep, you know, who I am and still be an American, because I call myself a Mexican American. You know, I can have that double identity. You know, it's a part of who I am, and, you know, I can't let it go.